If you or someone you know struggles with addiction, stay right here for the Recovery Boys. Lewis Finch and Macon Moy discuss alcoholism, drug addiction, co-occurring disorders, and life in recovery. And now, here's Lewis and Macon.
I'm Macon.
And I'm Lewis.
And we're
the
the
Recovery Boys.
So, Lewis, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm tired.
I am too, man. What is it? I think
I
it's the
don't
weather,
know.
maybe?
We had our networking event last night at Briar Creek Country Club.
Yeah.
We had a really good crowd, about 40 folks, maybe closer to 50. But I was there till 9:30, and I had to drive back home an hour, and I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. In fact, I'm going to go take a nap after this.
Gotcha.
But I was looking so much to today's podcast that I just wanted to. I'm going to wrestle through this.
I
Be
got
a
you.
trooper, you know?
Well, I'm really looking forward to the show today. We have a guest, and you know, when we were doing this before we took the coronavirus break, we had it's Kayla, I think, was our person who was new to recovery, and we were kind of discovering her experience, or allowing our viewers to discover her experience. And so we wanted to start that back today, and we actually have a guest, and Lewis, I'll let you introduce Kelly to our audience. But we have a guest today who we're gonna talk about recovery and about the disease and her experience, because I think that the more you hear it, the more real it becomes. And you know, we face this all the time. We faced it this week, especially parents coming in with that same "I don't know what to do" conversation, you know. And Lewis, you said it so well when we were meeting with the parents this week. There's no playbook.
No.
There's no play. There are some hard truths to the disease and the best way to address it. But even if you do everything correctly, there's no guarantee it's going to turn out the way they want it to turn out.
Not at all.
And that's the sad part about the disease. And we end up in funerals. We end up in talking to parents who are seeing their kids or loved ones head off to jail. I mean, just because you do all the right things, it's not guaranteed that it's going to turn out the way you want it to.
Not at all. No.
So anyway, let's move on with the podcast.
So I do want to introduce Kelly. Kelly actually is, and she'll go into more detail, and she's actually she's successfully completed the intensive outpatient part of Wellness program, and she's now into what we call continuing care. And because of the way we address continuing care, it's an ongoing process. It's as long as she wants it as part of her life, it's in perpetuity. As long as we have the program, she can be here, and there's no additional charge for it, because we believe in long-term recovery. We believe this is a genetic disease that just like, and also it is a disease like cancer, diabetes, heart disease. It's treatable but never curable over a long period of time.
That's right.
I've said multiple times.
Yeah.
So it needs to be treated just like any other chronic illness. Maybe not the same level, but at various levels as you get more acclimated in life. And Kelly's what we refer to as in early recovery. And I find her story very unique. And I can't remember if I've told you this or not, but she's one of our miracles.
Wow.
And I because I saw her when she came in, as we both do. We see all the folks when they first come in. We talk to them, and some people we get more involved with than others because they just are a little more engaging. And that was kind of our situation when we first met. It became very personal. And when we decided to do this, and just for the record, in case any of you are aghast that we actually have a client here we're talking to, it's actually not only did she willingly accept it, she's looking forward to talking about this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's awesome. I mean, that's what we want. We want people to see recovery, you know, put a real face. It's not something we can describe. It's just a lot easier for you to see it. And, you know, that is such a good point, Lewis, is that what we're looking for is sustained remission. That's what we're after.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to say that you're cured is not, I mean, that's just, none of us are ever cured that suffer from this disease. And so sustained remission is the best you can hope for, and it delivers a wonderful life.
Well, and with that, what I'd like to do is kind of, I just off the bat, Kelly, if you don't mind, just kind of give everybody and you go back as far as you want to start this,
Okay.
and we'll fill in the gap of questions, but can you give us an idea of how you got not only to Wellwind, but also got to the place where you figured out you needed help?
Okay. Well, my story starts back a few years ago. I was working as a chef, and
A very good chef, by the
thank
way.
you. And my career took me to where I was working like 50, 60-hour weeks at that time. So I was working a lot.
Mhm.
I was working a lot, and I finally had a day off after 10 months. Went and got a massage, was going to get my hair cut, and woke up in the emergency room a few hours later. So I had a grand mal seizure. I stopped breathing on the side of the road. Found out later that it was a genetic brain lesion. It probably bled because of the schedule I was keeping and so forth. I immediately was taken out of work and lost my career in a nutshell.
And this was about how many years ago?
This happened about 5 years ago. I think the whole thing started about 7 years ago. I had a seizure and they weren't really sure what it was from. I had come off of the flu and pneumonia. They just weren't sure. And then I went and had a CT scan, and they found this condition. Nobody ever elaborated that it would be chronic or genetic or ongoing or whatnot. And then almost exactly a year later, I had the big seizure.
Okay.
So they took me out of work, the doctors, and I was at home. So I went from working the 60-hour-a-week schedule to having all this time on my hands. And so, I was always a social drinker. And I think a bit of depression kind of kicked in because, I wasn't going to work. I didn't know what I was going to do.
At the time, you were how old?
Gosh, I was 50.
Okay, so you were
Yeah.
You're very young to be having to go through that.
Yeah. And I was alone. I didn't have any family near me or anything. And it just became devastating. And the more time I had on my hands to sit and think about it, the more depressed I became.
Okay.
So then, I would try to, have a joking attitude about it. Oh, I could eat dinner at 3 if I want to, or I can have a glass of wine at 3 if I want to because I'm home,
Sure.
And then it became 2 glasses of wine, and then a bottle of wine, and then maybe 2 bottles of wine. And it was just a progression over time. And then adding COVID into it didn't help but accelerate the whole thing, because then it was fun to do, virtual cocktail parties, and everybody's doing it. And
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
We forget about that.
Virtual cocktail parties. I missed that memo.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, there was just a lot more, drinking going on. And, I did a lot of wine dinners and things like that as a chef. And we weren't doing those any longer because of COVID. But come to find out that the wine shop that I worked with, their sales went up 400% during COVID. And nobody else could get together. But, so that just kind of gave an idea of what was going on. But I knew I was drinking more. I knew it was becoming a problem with my health. I could feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew with the seizures, probably shouldn't be drinking at all,
Sure.
But I couldn't stop. And so I was making the deals with myself, no drinking Monday through Friday, but I could, have some cocktails on the weekend. And I would do okay with it. And then something would, I would have it early and then be upset with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And be okay again for 5 more days. And then, make an excuse as to why I could crack open the bottle again. And it just, I couldn't stop when I wanted to stop. I just couldn't stop.
That's our story, right? I mean, that's all of our stories. And I think this is so interesting that this is a drinking issue that happened later in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not something that Lewis and I drank alcoholically from an early age, but here you developed it, and I think it's really also interesting. And we always talk about co-occurring disorders and how alcohol is the symptom, not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't the wine; it was the wine was the solution, the self-medication to the depression.
Absolutely.
And I think
the boredom with not having this huge career,
right.
suddenly being taken away from you, having all, as you said, all this free time.
Yeah. Free time and being upset and yeah, and it was a way to kind of, and I didn't really realize it at the time, but it was numbing the feeling of loss, and it was an escape
Mhm.
because didn't have anyone to talk to, and you know, people were wonderful to me, and they were there, and they were great to me. But you know, everybody has life. You know,
Right.
6 8 weeks later, yeah, everybody rallied around me, and they were awesome. They were awesome, and I'll never forget that. But life goes on for everybody, you know, and you're still in that same space, and it just spiraled. And I'm not to say that I wasn't a drinker before. I did drink socially, but it was never a problem in my life ever.
Well,
Ever.
Megan and I talk about this too when we talk to folks, and I quite frankly remember your story and look on it as one example of that alcohol and drugs are not only good when used as directed.
Right.
It's those of us who are predisposed to addiction have to learn to live in that world because it's not going to be going away.
It's not, and let's face it. If alcohol affected the entire population the way it does the small number of us that are alcoholics, they would outlaw it completely.
Right.
And they don't. It's a huge industry, and I just think it is also fascinating that this one of the side effects of COVID is the increased number of drug addicts and alcoholics that is
Mhm.
produced.
Yeah.
And that's not something that you'll hear during the press conferences and everything
No.
else, but that's real. I mean, we've literally seen it, but COVID is just the latest reason that people found to drink more. We've been finding reasons forever
Right.
to drink more. I mean, alcoholics and drug addicts. And, you know, I've had conversations. It seems like the last couple of weeks for us, Lewis, we're dealing with younger people
Mhm.
and the people who are trying to help them. And it doesn't, I mean, you don't have to be a certain age to develop a problem. You can do it early, you can do it late, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But the circle is pretty easy to understand. I mean, there's something going on that you don't like about yourself. There's something going on the inside.
Mhm.
And the alcohol, the drugs is an attempt to make it go away or to fix it.
Mhm.
And as we said to the parents that we were speaking to this week, eventually it flips, and whatever was going on becomes secondary to the substance that we're
Yes.
using to try and address it. And all of a sudden, you got a full-blown addiction or alcoholism, which requires you at some point you have to stop that use, and then you have to flip back and start working on what's causing it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not complicated, but you do have to understand what you're doing.
Well, and Kelly too, when you came to us, you were in a fairly new relationship,
Yes.
which as we all know, when you're going through this, is really difficult. In fact, they tell you if you're in recovery, not to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with one of my guys this week who's sober a grand total of almost 2 months, and now all of a sudden he's going to set the world on fire. And I was like, so give yourself 12 months
Yeah.
as a launching platform for your new life, not 2 months. I said, because invariably what's going to happen is life's going to disappoint you. It always does.
Mhm.
Just because we get sober doesn't mean our life all of a sudden turns out to be flowers and roses and it's beautiful. I mean, we deal with bad stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, Kelly, did your drinking, did it ever get to a point where it started costing you? I mean, explain to the people that are watching us this morning, what happened that finally made you realize that you needed to get some help?
Oh gosh. Looking back now with a clearer mind, I see what was happening. But I had friends that were staying away from me. So I was losing those relationships, and then closer to when I came to Wellwyn or found Wellwyn, I had a couple instances where I had gotten too drunk. I had put myself in unsafe positions. I have family and my partner at the time, who's now my fiance. Everybody was wanting to get away from me. It was, things have to change now or we cannot have relationship. I mean, my son did not want to see me or have me see my granddaughters until I got some help. And so at that point, it was devastating to hear. It's
Mhm.
devastating to hear because you already feel alone. You're already depressed. And then now everybody that's close to you is going to walk away as well. And that was eye-opening and crushing at the same time,
So you came in and you started. I don't know. You tell me. You started slow. You started fast. You started, and then you had some hiccups along the way. Right?
Yeah. No, I came in. I didn't think you guys were going to ever get rid of me. I was here for every session. I was always here, and I just totally embraced what was here. It wasn't easy. I mean, 10 days into coming here, I had a major hiccup when I went to see my son, and I went to visit him in Houston, and ended up with alcohol poisoning and at the hospital, and it just wasn't good. It wasn't good, but I talked to you on the phone from Houston in the hotel room, and as soon as I got here, I came back immediately and just got back into group, into therapy, and talking to everybody. And I think that's what saved me. I mean, I know that's what saved me is having everybody. I knew I had a place to go to, and I knew that everybody would be supportive and nobody was going to judge me. You know, you guys were not walking away from me, and that was huge. And
that was, would you come in last June, May? June?
I came here end of May. May 26th was my first recovery day, and then I had to change that to June 4th. And then I changed it again in July. I had another hiccup with stress and went back to my immediate
go to.
Yeah. And I knew as soon as I did it, it was the wrong thing to do. I didn't binge. You know, it's not an excuse, but I knew immediately. And I called and spoke to my therapist here, actually a couple of therapists that day, and they walked me through the weekend, and right back here on Monday, I was back here again. And that's what's done it, is being in an environment where you have so much support. And I knew even if I wasn't in group, I could come up here and sit on the couch and talk,
which you did.
Which I did. I felt, like I said, I probably turned on the lights and shut off the lights on.
You were like
I was always here.
Well, you know, Lois, I think it's important and we say this all the time to people coming to our program. We consider relapse part of the disease.
It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be everybody part of everybody's, but
it does not. It wasn't part of my disease. Right. I mean, I never had a relapse, but my bottom was so deep that the memory of that still to this day, it still keeps me away from alcohol and drugs. It's not that I didn't enjoy them and that I don't want them. It's just I can't have them.
Right. And
I'm perfectly okay with that. But I think one of the things that and Kelly, we'll let people. We'll let them, if you can explain to people how you address every day your issue, because I think that's important. And those are the things that we learn here at Wellwind. But I think it's important for everybody out there that's watching us to remember relapse is not something that you should be punished for. It's something that you should be supported, right? And we don't punish. I do know some programs that say you can't come back in for 30 days if you have a hiccup.
Oh, yeah.
And what do you think is going to happen to that person during those 30 days? You know,
well, and then to me, that's where we should be doing our best work.
Well, we have the opportunity to really impact somebody because they feel shame and guilt, and they're vulnerable during that period. It's the last thing you should do is stay away from them.
Correct.
Everything you should do is cover them up with support, which is what we do here. And so I think we talk about that all the time, but I think it's one of the things that differentiates our product from some of the other products out there in the marketplace is that we don't kick you out because you have a hiccup. I mean, it's just part of the disease.
And then the other part that really fascinated me about what you've done over the last, you said May, so almost was 2/3 of it, 3/4 of a year.
Yes.
Is that you had all of these trips planned.
Yes.
Out of the country.
Yes. Because
the coronavirus set all these trips back a year or two. And in order you didn't want to miss out the opportunity, but describe what you did to be able to go on and tell about these. You've done some traveling that I will never do, just so you know. I don't want to go on. I want to stay on a couch watching Netflix. That's but you did some real traveling.
That's your happy place.
That's my happy place, yes. That's not where you went. And you did some really remarkable things, but I'd love for you to describe kind of what that process did leading up to, and then how you held it together. I think it's important people understand that.
Yeah. Well, we had some trips planned, and I was given the option by my fiance to not do the trips. You know, if I wasn't comfortable.
Mhm.
I mean, the first trip was to France. You know,
Is there any drinking going on over there?
a little maybe
Yeah.
here and there,
Yeah.
in between the wineries or you know the cafes and whatnot. But so I really thought about it and put a plan into place, because with Houston I didn't really have a plan, and I found that out later talking to my therapist Cindy that and Chandra that the plans, I didn't have a plan.
Okay.
I kept being asked, "What's your plan?" My plan was just not to drink. You know, there was how hard is that? That's a pretty good plan, right?
Yeah.
Didn't work. So this time I had a solid plan. I was in touch with my therapist every single day. My partner started going to Al-Anon and started understanding the disease more in a supportive side, and also how it affected her life, and learned that it affected her life even before me. So it was therapeutic for her too. So she decided to stop drinking the same time I went to recovery. So that was
So I
incredible.
didn't know that. So,
Yes,
so-
that was incredibly
wow.
helpful. So she's actually has more sober days than I do.
Well, see?
Yes.
See?
Yes.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
did not know that.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So that's been incredibly supportive, and I know not everybody gets that.
No,
You
but-
know. And so we just went in with looking for different type of experience. Then, you know, instead of France and wineries, it was France and museums and historical sites and great food, and trying to find the most interesting mocktails that are out there, and you know, things like that. I just turned travel into a different thing, but keeping in contact with my therapist every day. And even with the time change, if I wasn't, because of the time change, she was, you know, checking in on me, and so that was incredibly helpful. And I know a lot of places don't do that. A lot of people wouldn't take the time to do that, and I felt so blessed, and that was such a support in itself. I mean,
I do remember when, and during one of your hiccups, because we don't, you know, you can call them relapses, but they're kind of bumps in the road when you do a reset.
It's,
like you
yeah, it's part of it's part of her
Yeah.
story, right?
correct.
We all have our stories.
So I remember right after that, she and I had a conversation. She was upset,
yeah,
and what I loved about and I didn't know that's the part about her not drinking. I love the fact that she gave it. She kept trusting the process,
yes,
which a lot of folks don't do. But it obviously showed that your relationship with her was such that there was more there than just she was willing to take the gamble on you,
yeah.
and it paid off huge dividends.
Huge. I mean, our lives have changed
Haven't they,
incredibly. I'm sorry.
Haven't they though? They've really. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's you're a different human being than when you first came in the
Yeah.
door.
And I feel different. I feel like my old self, that I was a faint memory,
Mhm.
and I didn't really realize how, you know, they say it's a progressive disease. I'm looking at it over COVID, and I know it's much more than that. You know,
Right.
it may have started as social drinking. It may have been a little bit more here and there, but when I can really look back at it without the fog and the fuzz, I see that it was a progression over a long time. You know, it just became a problem after, you know, the last few years.
Oh yeah.
But having the support, not only at home but here. I mean, if I didn't have the support at home, I knew I could be here 6 days a week,
Right.
no matter what. And
Right.
daytime was the worst time for me, and that's why I would come up here and sit on the couch. I don't care if I read, if I talked to other people. People that were in the program were so incredibly supportive and letting you know they're so grateful you're here. You couldn't ask for a better, you know, better support system.
Well, but I think the key though, and you've touched on it, is that you had a plan and you worked the plan.
Yes.
This is recovery is an action plan.
That's exactly
The
right.
whole- it isn't I'm not going to drink. That's not drinking is not a plan.
That's
But
right.
we all think it is.
That's a
It
wish. not
sounded
a
good.
plan.
It
Right.
sounded
Sounds really
it
good.
sounded great.
I'm not going to drink and I'm going to be okay. But that's not, as Macon first alluded to. It's that depression you were going through. It's all that stuff that you had to clear up in your own head. Knowing now what you know, it was going to happen to you anyway. I mean, there's certain people that go through exactly what you went through. They just don't drink and do drugs on top
Right.
of it.
Right.
So you take that one variable out, and you know what? Life gets a little bit easier to handle.
Mm-hmm.
It does, and I think one of the other, and you're a case in point. People ask me all the time. I mean, I was asked this yesterday. Well, what am I going to do if I'm not drinking? People can't imagine their life without smoking weed, or dropping a pill, or shooting up, or having a cocktail, because it's so ingrained into who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And they're scared to death that their life is just going to end because they're not going to be able to continue to do that. And I always look at them and I always explain to them how much better my life is. And I think people in recovery would explain that. But that is one of the big hurdles that we have to, when we're talking with these people who haven't quite decided, they're looking at recovery but haven't made a decision to pursue it, is that your life doesn't get worse, it gets better.
Right.
Just because you don't drink doesn't mean that you don't go out or enjoy things. I mean, life continues. You're just in a better position to accept it as it comes at you.
Very much so.
And I think that's an important point. And we live it. I mean, I have a great life. You have a great life. You have a great life now. And alcohol and drugs aren't part of it.
Right.
It's just not. So let me ask you something, Kelly. What do you do every day when you wake up to the time you go to sleep to not drink?
To not drink? Well, I wake up and I try to balance my day. I know for me, balance is the best thing. Trying to keep stress low. And I just get up and have an immediate sense of gratitude. And I try to take it hour by hour, And
Smart.
when I first heard that, I was like, well, whatever.
Yeah, it sounds like a bumper sticker.
Yeah. Okay.
Slogan.
Yeah. And it is the truth. And it's hour by hour. And you get through the hour and then you go on to the next one and you make the best plan that you can for the day. I'm going to come here for continuing care. I'm going to see my therapist for an hour. I'm going to have lunch with some of the people I met here. I just try to take it hour by hour. I've been starting to cook again, which is awesome for me. That's therapy in itself, to be in the kitchen.
Good.
So,
and we get to eat it, so
yeah.
it's always it's a good thing for all of us.
Damn right. Let me tell you something. This is a plug, okay? It's a shameless commercial plug. This woman makes some of the best food. She will freeze it for you, and you can thaw it out, and you can eat it at home. And it is, I've got my freezer filled with it.
Awesome.
But none of that was going to happen 9 months ago.
No.
It wasn't going on.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I had kind of given up on all of it. So that was a huge thing. But staying in contact, I didn't realize how much, I couldn't just show up for group, even though it was every day. But, staying in active contact with people.
Mm-hmm.
So, we made other people I met in IOP, we made a group. We talk every single day. It's almost kind of like our virtual AA group. We always check in. If somebody is in trouble, we talk. If not, it's funny things just to make our day, give us a giggle in the day and just know that we're always there for each other. I didn't have that before.
That's
I didn't
support
have that before.
and accountability. We say it all the time. It's not complicated. It's easy to understand. It's just hard to do.
Yeah.
It's really what it comes down to, right?
The doing part is...
But as you said, Lewis, recovery is an action plan. It's not a concept.
Right.
It's not something that you can read about, close your eyes, blink, and all of a sudden, it's work. And the first part of it is hard work, complicated work.
Well, and you think about asking a 50-year-old to stop doing something they've at least been doing it in a social way for probably 30 some years.
Yeah.
Just say, I'm sorry, you can't do that anymore. And we have people come here all the time who go, do I have to stop drinking? And the correct answer is you don't.
Right.
But what are the current circumstances if you don't?
We said all the time, we try and introduce people to the world of consequences. Every decision you make has a consequence. As long as you go into it with your eyes open, okay, you already know that if you drink, you'll probably drink too much and it's going to cause problems. If you're okay with that, then have at it.
Right.
You can buy it right around the corner here. You can get all you want. But don't come back to me and say, I don't know what happened, because we all know what happened.
Right.
You chose the thing that you know is the worst for you. And we're selfish, right? Alcoholics and drug addicts.
In active addiction, we are very selfish.
We're very selfish, and we always make decisions based on what we want, not what's best for us and what's best for the people that love us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that accountability, and the other thing, we talk about it all the time, good nutrition, exercise, and sleep. I mean, some basic components of a good life, right? If people would just follow those things, it makes recovery a little bit easier. I mean, I know when I went to treatment, we had to be in the gym for 2 hours. We had a nutritionist that we had to meet with. So all the things, you had to be to bed early, up early, all the things that they're trying to get you to practice in order to have sustained remission.
Right.
And so I think that Kelly, she lives that now, and she understands the benefits.
Well, and also you have access to no, I'm not saying anything I haven't said out public, to some of the best therapists in this area.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we have,
because we deal with a mature census. We deal with folks who probably in a lot of cases would not seek help because there's not a peer group out there to replicate what they've been going through. I mean, you were an executive chef. You served meals to people who I can't pretend to understand how to do all that. And Make and I were businessmen. There's a certain amount of pride that goes into getting in recovery that you have to suck up to do. You had your life basically ripped away from you, and you had no hint in sight as to what the positives were going to be.
Right.
And that's why it kind of took you a little bit longer. But also it took you longer to figure out that you were an alcoholic too.
Yeah. I think it's not obviously a realization anybody wants to accept, and also like the friends, these are all the people I hang out with and everything, and then you're hearing people, places, things, you have to make all these changes, and it could be just overwhelming.
Yeah.
But as you get clearer, as I got clearer, I could see that there was a little meat in those sentences there that you do have to actually make those changes, and you'll be better for them, because some people are going to drop, and that's just the evolution of just life in itself. People are going to come and go throughout your life, and some of them you might want to close that door a little quicker, but you just don't want to let friendships go. You feel like you've stripped everything from yourself. Everything's being stripped from you, and you're holding on to all these things, and sometimes you just have to do it.
And there's a certain amount of trust.
Yes.
That you have to put in the process.
Yes.
Which no question about.
A lot of us take for granted, but it's trusting. What we repeat over and over again is, particularly with people who are resistant to the help, your thinking got you in this position to begin with. How about letting someone else drive the ship for a period of time?
That's perfect.
Until you can take over. And there'll come a point in time where I won't say this will be easy, but at least will allow you to, when you're in a bad mood and when you feel in a certain way that triggered you to drink, that you stop and think, because you hear it all the time because you're part of the program. Mindfulness meditation which is things that if you haven't done before. Macon and I grew up in the era when they were like voodoo science. So our generation thought it does work, absolutely work, and it keeps you from doing things that you might ordinarily do. The depression part of what you went through too, and people take this for granted, I guess. Alcohol is a depressant.
It sure is.
It didn't help the situation.
No, it's going to do exactly the opposite of what you want it to do, which is take away that feeling. It's going to actually make your bottom even further, so you get even more depressed.
Right.
And that's not the way to take care of this.
Right.
Well, I think it's obvious to us because we're in recovery, but people who live in recovery have great lives. I mean, we're not a bunch of people sitting around in one room playing bingo all day.
No.
I mean, some of the greatest people, I think about it. I was talking to somebody. You think about Anthony Hopkins, sober for 30-some years, Samuel L. Jackson, Eric Clapton. I mean, these are people who have accomplished unbelievable things sober.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be the best version of yourself, try and do it without substances in your body, and I think you'll be surprised how great your life can be. But we hear it all the time, especially the younger people who have been raised in this culture of using, and they can't imagine what their life's going to be like if they can't go out and hang out with their friends and drink too much.
Right.
You know, and listen, some people go through that little cycle and stop and become mature adults and have great lives, but some of us don't.
Right.
Some of us carry that habit, and it only becomes greater as we get older, and we're creating problems, especially when you talk about you thought that nobody knew. It turns out when we finally get sober that our alcoholism or drug addiction is the worst kept secret in America.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that we have a problem,
Right.
except for us.
Right.
And for whatever reason, sometimes it takes somebody who really cares about you to be honest with you. And those are the ones that we get the maddest at because we don't want to hear it, right?
Yeah.
Because we're kind of enjoying our little deal, you know.
Right.
And when somebody hits you with the truth, it really kind of pisses you off, you know, because it just at some point, I think you probably realize I've got a problem.
Yeah.
And, you know, we just hate to admit we have problems. But if you can ever go through the process and come out on the other side, the life can really get to be a lot more interesting. At least it is for me.
Absolutely.
Well, and as young as you are, you've got a lot of life ahead of you.
No question.
And particularly when you're in a relationship, I couldn't be more thrilled for what you've done. And if you already aren't, you should be very proud of what you've done.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
and
Thank you.
I can't tell you how much we appreciate you coming in and sharing all your stuff with us today. I think that one of the things that we really want this podcast to be is informational, but it's also, I mean, I think that we are examples of people who had problems, who you know, went and got help for their problems and now are enjoying our life.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the thing that we, you know, I say it over and over again, but trying to convince people that your life will actually be better, not worse, because you don't drink, it's a hard thing the first time you kind of address it with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, you just can't imagine making those changes and things being better. But
But you mentioned you used to cook with alcohol.
yeah.
I mean, what do you do now?
I use fruit juices and vinegars, and that's kind of my thing, is trying to figure out how to give the same flavors and do the same thing, but with different ingredients. And that's kind of a fun challenge for me. So,
Even though alcohol, when you cook, is going to burn off.
Right.
You know for a fact.
yeah, but I did some research, and I don't think it burns off completely. So yeah,
That's good to know.
Yeah, so we were looking at that as well, and cooking wines versus regular wine, you know, all of that kind of thing. But yeah, it's kind of a challenge. I like that.
It's interesting. I remember when I was sober probably 4 years, and I went to Florida after my wife had died, and we went to this restaurant, and they asked if I wanted to order the dessert, and the dessert was written on a blackboard behind me. I didn't look. I said, "What is this?" They said it's a chocolate pie or chocolate cake. I went, "Great." It would actually be rum cake.
That's right.
And I took a bite and I went, "This isn't. I can't do this." I felt guilty,
Right.
just by doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It tasted like rum, and I went, "Whoa! I gotta." I called my sponsor. It shook me up.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you,
Oh.
we have this one lady for Thanksgiving and for Christmas. Her specialty is rum cake, and I mean, if you lit a match close to it, it would blow up. That's how much it would burn.
Yeah.
That's how much rum's in it. And I looked at Taylor, my wife, and I was like, you know, and you can, once you get that close to it,
Yeah.
it overwhelms you. It's like, I felt like this before, and you know,
Yeah.
it's wonderful cake, but I'm
Mhm.
telling you, it is loaded with, it is really loaded with rum.
Well, I understand what you said about the guilt of taking the bite,
Mhm.
because I thought once I was in recovery for a while, like, okay, I'm gonna start cooking with the wines, and I'm gonna start cooking again. And I was here, and I made, I can't even remember what it was, but it was something that usually has wine in it, and I had been omitting it. So I used the wine in it. You know, I taste everything as I'm going. I can taste the alcohol. Panic.
Right.
Crank up the heat. You know, I'm going to burn this alcohol off. Taste it again. Panic and stuff. And then I find myself obsessively taking it. And I came in the next morning. I came in for group, and I told my therapist, I told Cindy, or one of them, Cindy or Chandra, somebody, this is what happened. This is what I did. I want to take a test right now. And sure enough, it ended up
Is
being
it really?
it ended up
I
being
didn't know.
positive, and I was flipping out because I'm thinking they're gonna think I tasted it and went, oh great, dumped the
Right.
pan in my mouth or
Right.
something. But I felt such immediate guilt
That's
over it.
that's a good sign.
Yeah,
I
it is.
felt
It is.
horrible.
It just means that you've been listening
Yeah.
and been
Yes.
learning. So
I
I
felt
think
horrible.
that's great. Well,
So the wines go. There are no more wines in the
oh, we'll feel much better about all the stuff you bring in. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Listen, Kelly, thanks for being
Absolutely.
here today. We
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Lewis,
Yes.
this is another great podcast.
Absolutely, I love this.
We'll
It's
be
great.
back next week.
And I do want to, down the line, we'd love to have you back
I would
Oh,
love
yeah,
to.
absolutely.
to kind of give us a progress report,
No question about it.
so that we can see how you've done. And
Sounds great.
Give
I
hope.
would love it.
Give hope. Your story should give hope to a lot of folks.
Absolutely should.
Absolutely would love
should.
to.
And we're
Awesome.
proud of you, and we're glad you're part
Thank
of
you.
the Wellman program and family.
Yeah, I think I can speak for Macon. We're much better off having you here.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
You're an inspiration.
thank
I've
you.
told a lot of people that you're an inspiration when I see you in here, and I did get to see a lot of you. Still do,
Yeah.
which I really like doing.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Thanks, guys.
yeah. Well, thanks for
Appreciate
coming in. So I'm Macon.
And I'm Lewis.
And we're the Recovery
Boys.
Thanks, everybody. Go to therecoveryboys.com. This show will be posted quickly. Terry, our crack team here, will make sure that it's out. Terry's amazing. And we will see you again next week on the Recovery Boys. Lewis?
Thank you, Macon.
Thank you, Lewis.
I will
And
see
Will,
you
thank
next
you, buddy.
week.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks
Good
so
night,
much.
guys.
Good night, everybody.
Mama, take this badge from me, 'cause I can't use it anymore. It's getting